The alien marketplace of Vorath Prime was always loud, hot, and full of strange smells. Eli walked through the crowded streets, his boots covered in red dust. He came here only to buy some food, maybe a few slices of fresh meat for his ship's long journey. He was tired, hungry, and his credits were low. Around him, creatures of every kind shouted in their native tongues. Traders waved their glowing scales, others showed off cages of living food. Some stalls sold live fish that floated in tiny bubbles of water. Some sold roasted insects that hissed when you touched them. Eli was used to it all. He had been traveling between worlds for months. Humans were rare out here. Most aliens stared at him like he was some odd animal. He ignored them and kept walking, looking for something cheap to eat. But then, he heard something that made him stop. A soft cry, not of an animal, but of a person. He turned his head and saw a stall covered with dark cloth. Behind it stood a tall, gray-skinned merchant with 4 eyes and a wide mouth full of small teeth. The man waved at Eli. "You look like you can pay, human. Come see what I have." Eli sighed. "If it's meat, I'll take a look," he said. The merchant grinned and pulled the cloth away. Inside the cage was not meat, not livestock. It was a woman. She was small compared to the alien crowd. Her skin had a faint silver glow. Her eyes were bright like twin moons, but there was fear in them. She sat on the ground, wrapped in torn fabric, her wrists bound by a strange energy cuff. Eli's heart sank. "What is this?" he asked. The merchant laughed. "Not what, human? Who, a worthless thing, used to belong to a noble house, now broken, won't speak, won't work. Good for nothing but selling. I'll give you a discount." Eli felt anger rise inside him. He looked around. No one cared. Some aliens were laughing. Others were just passing by. This was normal. It made his stomach twist. "You're selling people?" he asked slowly. "Slaves," the merchant corrected proudly. "You humans do it too. Don't act surprised. This one was caught after the war. Her kind caused trouble for the council. They wiped out her world. I got what was left." Eli stared at the woman. Her silver eyes met his for a moment. They weren't begging. They were empty, as if she had already stopped believing in life. Something inside Eli snapped. He pulled a few credit chips from his pocket and threw them on the table. "I'll take her," he said. The merchant blinked. "You? Take her? She's not good for work or fun. You'll regret it, human." "Just open the cage," Eli said coldly. The merchant shrugged and unlocked it. The energy cuffs blinked and fell apart. The woman didn't move at first. Eli stepped closer and held out his hand. She looked up at him slowly, her lips trembling. "You're free now," he said quietly. But the moment she touched his hand, a faint spark of light passed between them. It felt like static, but stronger. Eli pulled back slightly. The woman gasped. Her silver skin shimmered for a moment before fading again. The merchant laughed. "Ha, look at that. The cursed ones always do strange things. I warned you, human. You're a fool." Eli didn't reply. He placed his jacket over her shoulders and guided her away from the stall. Behind him, the merchant shouted something about no refunds. The crowd stared but said nothing. They walked through the maze of the market in silence. Eli could hear her soft steps behind him. When they reached the edge of the bazaar, he stopped and turned to her. "What's your name?" he asked. She didn't answer. She only looked at him with those glowing eyes. "Can you understand me?" He tried again. After a long pause, she whispered in a soft, broken voice, Why did you buy me?" Eli hesitated. He wanted to say he didn't know. Maybe because it felt wrong to see someone treated like an object. Maybe because he was tired of the cruelty of this galaxy. "Because no one else would," he said finally. For a moment, something changed in her face. Not joy, not sadness, just confusion. Like she didn't know what kindness felt like anymore. They walked to the landing pad where Eli's ship waited. A small, old cargo vessel called Rustwing. The engines hissed softly as the sun dipped behind the domes of the alien city. The woman followed him slowly, her eyes scanning everything as if it was all strange to her. Inside the ship, Eli showed her the small cabin. "You can rest here," he said. "No one will hurt you." She stood at the doorway, her fingers brushing the metal wall. You don't understand, she whispered. You shouldn't have bought me. Eli frowned. Why? Her eyes turned brighter for a moment, glowing like liquid silver. Her voice trembled. Because now they will come for you. Before Eli could ask who she meant, a faint beeping echoed from the ship's console, a signal from the outer sensors. Several unknown ships had entered orbit above the city. He didn't know it yet, but that single act of kindness had changed his fate forever. He looked at her again, and for a heartbeat, he thought he saw something behind her fear. Power, ancient and sleeping, waiting to wake. Eli didn't understand what kind of life he had just bought, but deep down, he knew this was no accident. It was destiny beginning to move. Eli's ship, the Rustwing, lifted off from Vorath Prime under the crimson light of its twin suns. The engines hummed softly, carrying them through the thin atmosphere and into the cold black of space. The market's noise faded behind them, but in Eli's mind, the woman's last words kept echoing, "They will come for you." He glanced at her sitting, quietly in the corner of the small cabin, wrapped in his jacket. Her eyes were half closed, but she wasn't sleeping. Eli could tell by the way her fingers trembled. She wasn't afraid like a prisoner. She was alert, listening to something he couldn't hear. Eli leaned against the control panel. "You want to tell me who they are?" he asked. She didn't answer. For a moment, silence filled the cabin, only the hum of the engines breaking it. Then she spoke, her voice low. "The Council doesn't let things go. They erased my world, and now they erase those who remember it." Eli frowned. "Your world?" She looked up slowly, her glowing silver eyes meeting his. "Kinara," she said, "a place that no longer exists. They called us dangerous because we were not like them. We could see energy, shape it, feel it breathe." She paused, her voice almost breaking. "They feared us, so they burned everything." Eli sat down across from her. "And you were part of that world." She nodded. "I was a queen once, or maybe just a symbol, the last voice of a people they wanted forgotten." Eli didn't know what to say. He wasn't used to grand stories. He was just a trader, moving cargo and trying to survive. "So you're telling me I just bought a queen," he said softly. She smiled weakly. "You bought a ghost." Eli leaned back, rubbing his face. "Well, ghost or not, you're safe here." But she shook her head slowly. "No one is safe when the Council wants silence." As if to prove her words, the ship's console beeped again. Eli walked to it and checked the scanners. 3 signals, fast, approaching from behind. "Damn it," he whispered. "We're being followed." The woman stood, her bare feet silent on the metal floor. "They've already found us," she said calmly. "They always do." Eli began typing commands, switching frequencies, changing course. The old ship shuddered as he pushed the thruster's hat and "Order. You can feel them coming?" he asked. She nodded. "Their energy burns cold. I can sense it." Eli stared at her. The glow around her eyes was brighter now. Her skin seemed to shimmer faintly under the lights. He didn't understand what she was, but he knew she wasn't ordinary. The first blast hit the side of the ship, shaking it violently. Sparks flew from the control panel. "Hold on!" Eli shouted, grabbing the wheel. The ship spun out of control for a moment before he regained balance. "They won't stop," she said quietly. "They'll destroy everything to reach me." Eli looked at her, his jaw tight. "Then they'll have to catch us first." He turned sharply toward a nearby asteroid field. The ship dove into the dark maze of floating rocks. The pursuers followed, firing plasma bursts that lit up the shadows. The old Rustwing groaned under the stress. The woman stood in the middle of the cabin, her eyes closed. "Don't move," she said softly. Eli blinked. "What?" Her hands rose slowly, fingers tracing invisible lines in the air. The faint silver glow around her body brightened, spreading across the room. The next blast from the enemy ships never hit them. Instead, the energy bent away, sliding off the hull like water. Eli stared. "How are you doing that?" She opened her eyes, light flowing from them. "I don't know, not fully. It's like my body remembers something my mind forgot." Outside, the enemy ships broke formation, confused. One crashed into an asteroid and exploded. The other two pulled back, their sensors unable to lock onto Rustwing. Eli slowed the engines, his heart racing. "You just saved us." She sank to her knees, trembling. "It's not saving, it's awakening," she whispered. "And that's worse." Eli helped her sit. "You need rest," he said. "You're safe now." She looked at him with tired eyes. "You keep saying that, human. You don't understand. My power. It's not meant for peace." He sat beside her. Then maybe it's time it was. For the same time, she seemed to really look at him, not with fear or distance, but with a small spark of something else. Hope. Outside the window, the asteroid field faded as they drifted into deep space. The stars stretched endlessly before them. She whispered softly, "My name is Lyra." Eli smiled faintly. "Eli," he replied. She nodded. "You should forget me, Eli, before they find you." He looked out at the stars. "Too late for that," he said quietly. "I already bought trouble. Might as well see how deep it goes." Lyra watched him, unsure if he was foolish or brave, maybe both. She touched the cold glass of the window, silver light dancing on her fingertips. "The galaxy is changing," she said softly. "And you just stepped into its heart." In the distance, a signal blinked faintly on a dark planet far away. Someone had seen what happened. Someone whispered into the shadows, "The widow lives." And across the void, the hunt began. The stars outside the ship glowed like frozen fire, endless and silent. Eli sat in the cockpit of the Rustwing, eyes heavy, but mind wide awake. He couldn't stop thinking about the woman asleep in the back cabin. Lyra, the alien queen, the ghost of a burned world. He leaned forward, watching the scanner flicker with faint signals. Every few minutes a new blip appeared, then vanished. Someone was out there tracking them. Eli had traveled half the galaxy, but he had never seen hunters move like this. Precise, patient, invisible. In the back room, Lyra stirred in her sleep. Her fingers twitched, her breathing uneven. Eli could hear faint whispers echoing through the ship, voices that weren't his. He walked quietly toward her, opening the door just enough to look inside. She was dreaming, or something close to it. The silver glow on her skin was spreading, forming strange symbols that pulsed with rhythm. Eli stepped closer, feeling warmth in the air. Then suddenly her eyes shot open, glowing bright white. "They're close," she whispered. Eli froze. "Who?" Lyra stood up slowly. "The wardens," she said. "They guard the silence of the council. They hunt what should not exist." He turned to the console, scanning again. And there they were. 3 ships on the edge of radar, moving fast. "We can't outrun them forever," Eli said. "This old ship barely holds together." Lyra's voice was calm but heavy. "Then we stop running." Eli looked at her in disbelief. "You want to fight? Against warships?" She walked to the center of the cabin, her silver hair falling over her shoulders like strands of light. "I won't hide again. I hid once, and my world died." Her words hit him hard. He had lost people too, not a planet, but enough to understand the weight of loss. "All right," he said quietly. "But if we're doing this, we do it smart." He guided the Rustwing toward a dark planet nearby, half covered in shadow, an old mining world long abandoned. "We'll hide there. Buy time." The landing was rough, dust clouds rising like ghosts as the ship touched the barren ground. The planet was silent except for the wind. The air smelled of iron and old smoke. They stepped outside, the cold biting through their clothes. Lyra's eyes shimmered faintly as she looked around. "This place remembers pain," she said softly. "It's good." Eli raised an eyebrow. "Good? It's a graveyard." "Graveyards are quiet," she answered. "Quiet is where power grows." They walked into a broken structure that once housed miners. Eli set up a small generator for light. The walls were covered in faded writing, names, prayers, desperate messages left by workers who never left. Lyra placed her hand on one of the walls, and the letters began to glow. "What are you doing?" Eli asked. "Listening," she whispered. "The universe never forgets the cries of the lost." The air vibrated, faint energy pulsing through the floor. The symbols on her skin responded, glowing brighter. Eli watched in awe. You can feel the planet? Lyra nodded slowly. Every world has a heartbeat. Even dead ones whisper if you listen. Before Eli could answer, the scanner on his wrist beeped. They found us, he said, looking at the readings. 3 ships descending fast. Lyra's voice turned cold. Then let them come. Eli ran to the ship, checking weapons that barely worked. We have 1 plasma turret, 2 missiles, and hope, he muttered. Lyra stepped outside the shelter, the wind swirling around her. Her eyes glowed, brighter than before. Hope is enough, she said softly. The warden's ships broke through the clouds, dark and angular, beams of blue light cutting through the dust. Eli fired the turret, explosions lit the sky, but it wasn't enough. 1 beam struck near the ship, shaking the ground. Then Lyra raised her hands. The wind stopped. The light bent. For a heartbeat, everything was silent. And then, the ground erupted in silver fire. A wave of energy burst outward, wrapping around the descending ships. Their shields cracked like glass. The wardens screamed through the comms before their vessels crashed into the ground, flames scattering across the wasteland. Eli stared, unable to move. You destroyed them, he whispered. Lyra turned to him, her glow fading. No, I released them, she said quietly. They were slaves too, bound by the Council's will. Eli stepped closer. How did you do that? Her voice trembled. I didn't. It was the world. I just asked it to remember. He looked at her differently now, not just as someone to protect, but as something far beyond his understanding. She wasn't a weapon. She was something ancient, tied to the soul of creation itself. Lyra sank to her knees, exhausted. They'll send more, she said weakly. The signal's out. They'll know where I am. Eli helped her stand. Then we keep moving, he said. We'll find somewhere they can't reach. She looked up at him, eyes soft. There is no such place, Eli. But maybe there's someone who can help. Who? An old monk, she said faintly. He once served the flame. He lives on the moon of Aris, far from the Council's reach. Eli nodded. Then that's where we're going. He carried her back to the ship as the fires of the fallen wardens burned behind them. The stars above seemed closer now, watching, waiting. Inside the cockpit, Eli took a deep breath and powered up the engines. The ship rose slowly, carrying them toward the endless dark once again. Lyra closed her eyes, whispering something in her ancient tongue, a prayer maybe, or a warning. And far away, beyond hundreds of star systems, the Council's high chamber trembled as a voice echoed through its halls. The Widow Queen has awakened. The moon of Aris floated like a cracked pearl in the emptiness of space. Its pale surface shimmered under the light of a dying star. The Rustwing descended slowly, its old engines groaning. Eli guided the ship through clouds of silver dust, and for the first time in days, there were no pursuers on the radar. Lyra stood beside him, still weak from the last battle. Her eyes glowed faintly, soft silver instead of blazing white. She spoke little, only whispering the name, Saren, the monk she believed could help. When they landed, the air outside was cold but breathable. Ancient ruins dotted the landscape, half buried under frost. In the distance stood a single stone tower, tall, crooked, and covered in carvings that glowed faintly like veins of light. Eli glanced at her. You sure someone's still alive in that thing? Lyra smiled faintly. He's older than the tower itself. They walked across the frozen ground, each step echoing in the silence. No wind, no life, just the sound of their breathing. As they reached the tower, the old doors creaked open on their own. Inside, the air was warm. Candles floated mid-air, glowing with blue fire. Scrolls, crystals, and ancient machines, overed the walls. A figure sat in the center, tall, thin, draped in dark robes. His skin was pale green, his eyes blind and milky, but his voice was deep and clear. I knew the stars would bring you to me, widow of Kinara, the monk said. Lyra stopped, her breath catching. You remember me? The monk smiled gently. I remember what they tried to make us forget. Eli stepped closer, unsure whether to trust him. You're Saren? The monk nodded. Once, long ago, I served the flame. Before it was silenced. He looked at Lyra with sadness. I watched your kind fall, child. And I watched the galaxy cheer for its own ignorance. Lyra lowered her head. They called us dangerous. They said our gift corrupted worlds. Saren sighed. Power doesn't corrupt. Fear does. He turned his blind eyes toward Eli. And you, human, you've walked into a storm that was never meant for your kind. Eli folded his arms. I didn't walk. I stumbled. She was being sold like meat. I just couldn't leave her there. The monk's lips curved slightly. That is why the universe chose you. Eli frowned. Chose me? Saren raised a glowing hand. Every few centuries the flame looks for a bearer, not of blood, but of spirit. Someone unafraid to see worth where others see waste. Lyra looked at Eli, her eyes wide. You mean? Yes, the monk said. He is your anchor. Without him, the flame will consume you. Eli shook his head. I don't even understand half of this. What is this flame? The monk gestured toward the carvings on the wall. They shifted and glowed, forming moving pictures, a story written in light. It showed a galaxy full of color, then darkness spreading like smoke. Long ago, the flame was the heart of life itself, Saren explained. It flowed through those who carried empathy, truth, and strength. But when greed took over the stars, the council feared it. They hunted every bearer, and when they found Lyra, they thought they had extinguished it forever. Lyra's voice trembled. Then why am I still alive? Because the flame hides in the innocent, Saren said. When they destroyed your world, it fled. It buried itself inside you, waiting for a moment of kindness to awaken it again. Eli's chest tightened. A moment of kindness, he whispered, remembering the market, remembering how he reached out to her. The monk nodded. The day you touched her hand, the flame stirred, and now it burns again. Lyra took a step back. If it burns again, the council will come. They already have, Saren replied. And they will not stop until the galaxy kneels, or until you decide what the flame should be. Destruction, or rebirth. The room fell silent, only the soft hum of energy filling the air. Eli looked at Lyra. You don't want to destroy anyone, right? Lyra closed her eyes. I wanted revenge once. I dreamed of burning the stars that took my people. But now, she looked at him again. Now I see one human's kindness changed more than any army could. Saren's voice grew softer. Then you already know what must be done. He reached into the air, and from it, a small crystal appeared, glowing with soft blue light. Take this. It's a fragment of the original flame. It will guide you to the Heart Forge, where the last decision will be made. Eli frowned. Where is that? Saren's face turned grim. At the edge of the galaxy, inside the ruins of Kinara itself, Lyra's breath caught. My home, your grave, the monk said gently, and your rebirth. He placed the crystal in her hand, and for a moment, the whole tower shook. The carvings on the wall burned bright, the air humming like thunder. The monk smiled faintly. Go. Before the council's shadow arrives, the flame will protect you, but only if your hearts remain one. Lyra bowed. Thank you, Master Saren. The monk raised a hand. Do not thank me, child. Thank the one who bought mercy in a world that sold pain. As the turned to leave, Eli glanced back. Will you be all right here? The monk smiled sadly. My time ended long ago, go, light-bearer. The stars are watching. Outside, the wind began to rise. The rust-wing lifted again into the silver sky, carrying both human and alien toward destiny. Inside the ship, the crystal glowed softly between them, pulsing like a heart. Lyra looked out at the stars, whispering, If we reach Kinara, will we live? Eli smiled faintly. We've made it this far, he said. Maybe living isn't the point anymore. Maybe it's about changing what lives after us. Lyra turned her gaze to him, her silver eyes warm for the first time. You sound like a flame bearer already, she said softly, and beyond the stars, unseen by them both, a dark fleet moved through the void, 1,000 ships bearing the Council's mark, hunting the light that dared to rise again. The journey to Kinara stretched through regions of space that no map dared to name. The Rustwing moved silently between the stars, its hull covered in dust from forgotten nebula. Eli sat at the controls, watching the flicker of distant lightning inside cosmic storms. Lyra sat beside him, holding the crystal that Saren had given her, its glow steady and alive. Sometimes, when Eli glanced at it, he thought he saw shapes moving inside the light. Faces, maybe, or memories. Lyra had stopped sleeping. She said dreams weren't safe anymore. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the faces of her people, burning, reaching out to her, calling her name. Eli wanted to comfort her, but he didn't know how. He wasn't a hero. He wasn't a prophet. He was just a man who couldn't walk away from someone in pain. But every hour spent beside her made him feel smaller, as if he was standing beside a storm pretending to be a woman. The ship trembled as they entered Kinara's system. The planet appeared in the dark, silent, gray and broken. Mountains of glass, cities turned to ash, rivers frozen mid-flow. It looked like the bones of a god who had died screaming. Lyra stood silently, her hand pressed against the glass. Home, she whispered. Her voice was flat, no joy, no sorrow, just hollow truth. Eli watched the scanners. Radiation's low, we can land. The ship descended through black clouds and lightning that glowed purple. When the landing gear touched the ground, dust rose like ancient ghosts. Outside, the air was thin. The ruins stretched endlessly, towers half-melted, streets turned to glass. Lyra stepped out barefoot, her eyes glowing brighter than ever. This place remembers me, she said quietly. It feels like stepping inside my own grave. Eli followed, his boots crunching on the shattered ground. Then let's give it a new memory, he said. They walked toward the old palace at the center of the ruins. Once it had been a fortress of light, now it stood broken, its gates lay open, covered in ash. Inside, the great hall was filled with silence. As they entered, the crystal in Lyra's hand began to pulse, faster, brighter. The air shimmered, and suddenly, light filled the room. Figures appeared, not real, but echoes, memories carved into time. Eli froze. He saw alien children running, laughter, then soldiers in black armor storming in. Fire, screams, explosions. The images played around them like a nightmare on repeat. Lyra's eyes filled with tears that glowed like molten silver. I was here. I begged them to stop, she whispered. I tried to protect them, but the flame, it answered with destruction. Eli looked at her. You mean you destroyed this? Her voice cracked. I tried to save them, but I lost control, the council knew. They wanted me to burn, and I did. The echoes vanished, leaving only silence and the hum of the crystal. Lyra fell to her knees, trembling. I don't deserve to carry the flame. It's cursed. It takes everything I love. Eli knelt beside her, placing his hand on her shoulder. You didn't kill them, Lyra. The ones who feared you did. The ones who used you did. You were just trying to survive. Her eyes lifted to meet his, tears running down her cheeks like liquid light. Then why did the flame choose me again? Eli smiled faintly. Maybe because you're the only one who still feels pain. The only one who still cares. For a moment, the crystal pulsed brighter. Spreading warmth through the cold air, Lyra gasped softly. It's responding to you. Eli looked at the glow between them. To me? Lyra nodded. The flame recognizes kindness. It listens to hearts that give, not take. Suddenly the ground shook, the palace walls cracked, and a deep voice echoed through the ruins. Found you. Outside, a massive ship descended from the clouds, black as night, bearing the insignia of the Galactic Council. Beams of blue light cut through the sky. Soldiers in heavy armor descended. Their leader, tall and cloaked, stepped forward, his voice cold as metal. By order of the High Council, you are to surrender the relic known as the Flame. Eli drew his blaster, though he knew it was useless. You're too late, he said quietly. Lyra stood, the crystal floating from her hand, rising between them like a star. The energy in the air thickened until even the soldiers paused. You fear what you don't understand, she said softly. You destroy what you cannot control. The leader raised his weapon. And we will end it again. But before he could fire, the flame erupted. A surge of light exploded outward. The ground glowed, the air vibrated. The soldiers froze, trapped in the brilliance. Eli shielded his eyes, but he felt no pain, only warmth. When the light faded, the ruins were gone, replaced by living stone, flowers blooming, air clean again. The soldiers were gone, not dead, but vanished, as if rewritten by the world itself. Lyra stood in the center of it, but all, her body shining like a star. It's awake, she whispered. The flame is whole again. Eli stared, unable to breathe. What happens now? She turned to him, smiling faintly. Now we choose what kind of world it will burn for. Her hand reached for his, their fingers touching, and the flame pulsed between them, merging light and shadow, human and alien, hope and sorrow. The sky above them opened, revealing stars brighter than he'd ever seen. The ashes of Kinara lifted into the air, turning into light. The world reborn from its own death. Eli looked at her. You did it. Lyra shook her head. We did, she said softly, because you believed when no one else would. And far beyond the reborn sky, in the halls of the council, alarms began to sound, because something ancient had just returned, and this time it carried humanity in its heart. The reborn world of Kinara glowed like a living sun, its rivers shining with silver light, its mountains breathing warmth instead of cold. Above the horizon, the Rustwing floated silently, watching the miracle unfold. Eli stood at the viewport, speechless. It felt like standing at the edge of creation itself. Lyra walked beside him, her skin faintly luminescent, the flame pulsing through her veins. The world remembers, she whispered. It forgives faster than the stars. But peace never lasts long in a galaxy ruled by fear. From the far reaches of the void, the Council's armadas gathered, 10,000 ships, each carrying soldiers who had been taught since birth that the flame was death. And now they came to destroy what had been reborn. Eli read the incoming transmissions on the console. They're broadcasting something, he said. His voice was calm but heavy. Lyra nodded slowly. They call me a weapon again, don't they? Eli glanced at her. They call you an infection. They call me a fool. Lyra smiled faintly. Then we must be doing something right. Before the fleet arrived, refugees began to appear, small ships limping out of hyperspace, battered and broken. They were smugglers, miners, and slaves, outcasts from across the stars, drawn by the light of Kinara's rebirth. They had seen the flame's signal and came seeking hope. Eli opened the comms. You're entering protected space. Identify yourselves. A weak voice replied. We don't want war. We just want to stand where light still lives. Eli looked at Lyra, and she nodded. Let them come, she said softly. Within days, the orbit of Kinara filled with ships of every kind, human and alien alike. Some brought food, others brought weapons, but all carried the same spark. Belief. In the palace ruins, now rebuilt by the living flame, Lyra stood before them, her voice echoing across the comm channels. They call us dangerous because we dream of peace. They call us monsters because we refuse to kneel. But the galaxy has burned long enough. It's time it learned what compassion looks like. Her words spread across systems faster than the Council's orders could silence them. Entire colonies began to question their masters. Soldiers laid down their arms, and for the first time in generations, the Council felt fear. Eli stood beside her as she addressed their growing army. You've become a symbol, he whispered. She turned to him, her expression soft. Symbols fade, people endure. But as the Council fleet entered orbit, the stars darkened. Their warships blotted out the light. The ground trembled as their cannons charged. Eli took a deep breath. We can't win this fight. Lyra looked at him, eyes glowing like twin suns. We don't fight to win, Eli. We fight so the galaxy remembers why it should care. The first strike hit the surface, a beam of blue fire that scorched the ground. Eli jumped into the rust wing, connecting it to the planet's defense grid. I'll draw their fire, he said. Lyra touched his arm. You'll die. He smiled faintly. Only if I stop moving. The rust wing shot into the sky, engines roaring, weaving between enemy fire. It was small but fast. Eli used every trick he knew, turning debris and asteroids into shields each. Time he dodged death, he thought of Lyra standing on the surface, holding the light alone. Down below, Lyra raised her hands to the heavens. The flame burst upward, forming a shield of living energy. The enemy's blasts scattered against it like rain on glass. The light grew brighter, spreading across the sky, connecting to every ship that carried hope. One by one, the refugee ships joined the defense, their weak energy combining with hers. Together they formed a ring of light around the planet. Eli's voice came through the comms. Lyra, they're charging the main cannon. You've got seconds. Lyra closed her eyes, whispering softly. Then we give them something they'll never forget. She lifted both hands, and the flame responded. The shield didn't just block anymore. It expanded, swallowing the darkness. Every ship that carried hatred was struck by light so pure it erased their weapons, melted their steel, and silenced their fear. The Council's grand fleet burned in silver fire, not destroyed, but cleansed. Their systems disabled, their leaders staring in disbelief as the flame wrapped them in peace instead of death. Eli's ship fell through the clouds, damaged from the strain. He barely managed to land, stumbling out into the light. Lyra! He shouted. She stood in the middle of the battlefield, her body glowing brighter than the sun. The air around her shimmered, the ground beneath her feet turning to glass. It's too much, she whispered. The flame doesn't want to stop. Eli ran to her, grabbing her hand. Then let me share it, he said. The moment their hands touched, the flame divided. Half of it pouring into him, half remaining in her. The power balanced, steady. The sky calmed. Lyra looked at him with wide eyes. You shouldn't have done that. He smiled weakly. You said the flame listens to kindness. Well, I'm not done talking. Together they lifted their gaze to the heavens. The fleet above Kinara drifted powerless, surrounded by stars reborn. Lyra whispered, We didn't destroy them. Eli nodded. No, we reminded them. All across the galaxy, the story spread. Not of death, but of a human and an alien who stood together against fear and won without hatred. And somewhere deep in the Council's heart, the old records changed. The flame was no longer marked as extinction, but as rebirth. Lyra looked at the horizon, her silver eyes soft with light. We changed it, she said. Eli smiled, exhausted but alive. No, he whispered. You changed everything. Above them, the stars burned brighter than ever before, and the flame of Kinara became the dawn of a new galaxy. The war had ended, not with victory songs or parades, but with silence. The kind of silence that comes when the universe holds its breath, afraid to disturb what has finally begun to heal. The Council's armadas were gone, their weapons reduced to drifting husks among the stars. Whole fleets floated powerless, their commanders unable to explain how a light could disarm them without spilling a drop of blood. The galaxy, once trembling beneath the Council's rule, was now trembling beneath its own guilt. On the surface of Kinara, life returned in colors unseen for centuries. Rivers of silver water ran through green valleys, air filled with glowing pollen that danced like living fireflies. The planet that had died in screams now sang softly again. Eli sat by the edge of one of those rivers, his boots in the cool water. He looked older, not in body, but in eyes. He had seen too much. A market full of cruelty, a ghost queen reborn, a war that ended not through destruction, but forgiveness. Behind him, Lyra walked barefoot through the grass. Her steps left trails of light that faded slowly. The flame no longer burned inside her as it once did. It now pulsed gently, calm, balanced, shared between her and the man who once bought her freedom. "You're quiet today," she said softly, sitting beside him. Eli smiled faintly, just trying to believe it's over. Lyra looked at the horizon. "Wars don't end, Eli. They change shape." He nodded. "Maybe, but this feels different. For the first time, no one's hunting us." She chuckled. "You miss the danger already." He looked at her, amused. "Maybe I miss the excuses to see you save the galaxy every few days." Her laughter was soft, like a melody carried by the wind. "You're the only one who could joke about the end of the world." He shrugged. "Someone has to remind you you're still alive." For a while they sat in silence, watching the sky. Above them, thousands of small ships drifted like lanterns, refugees, settlers, and wanderers who refused to return to the old systems. They had chosen to stay, to build something new on the ashes of what once was. Lyra watched them, her expression thoughtful. "They will call this place home again." Eli smiled. "Because you gave them one." She shook her head. "No, because we did." The word we hung in the air like sunlight. For so long, Lyra had spoken as a queen, alone, distant. But now her voice carried warmth, belonging. A soft wind passed, and the crystal flame appeared in her palm again. Smaller now, flickering like a living heart. "The flame is quiet," she whispered. "It doesn't demand. It doesn't burn. It just listens." Eli touched the edge of the glow, feeling warmth spread through his skin. "Maybe it learned something from us," he said. Lyra turned to him, her silver eyes reflecting both stars and tears. "It learned love," she said softly, "and patience. It learned humanity." He laughed lightly. "If humanity taught the universe something good, I'll call that a miracle." She looked at him for a long moment, then leaned her head gently against his shoulder. "You are the miracle, Eli. You turned a slave's curse into a queen's freedom." He exhaled slowly, the weight of her words sinking into him. "And you turned a lonely man into something worth remembering." Time passed, but neither of them moved. The flame flickered between their hands, weaving a faint halo around them. Far above, the old council's halls stood empty, its leaders gone, its archives rewriting themselves. Every digital record that once marked humanity as primitive now pulsed with a single new classification: kindred of the flame. Across distant worlds, humans once seen as weak began to rise in respect, not through war, but through example. Small acts of courage, mercy, and loyalty became the galaxy's new language, and among the stars people began to whisper stories about the human who bought a caged alien and changed the fate of creation. Back on Kinara, seasons turned, the planet grew forests again, and new cities were born from the old bones. The Rustwing, once a broken cargo ship, now rested under flowering vines, its metal hull home to birds that shimmered with light. Eli spent his mornings repairing old machines, his evenings teaching children from across worlds how to speak Earth's old tongue. Lyra often watched him from a distance, smiling at how ordinary the extraordinary could become. One night, under a sky full of twin moons, she walked to him again. "You could have left long ago," she said. "Gone back to your people, lived an easy life." He looked at her, the glow of firelight dancing in his eyes. "Home isn't a place anymore, Lyra. It's where someone finally needs you." She smiled, that same quiet, endless smile he had first seen in the marketplace. Except now, there was no fear behind it, only peace. "Then you'll never be lost again," she whispered. He reached out, brushing a strand of her glowing hair from her face. "Neither will you," he said softly. The flame shimmered faintly above them, a soft heartbeat in the sky it spread across to. clouds painting them in gold and silver. Every living being on Kinara looked up that night, feeling warmth fill their hearts. The legend of the Widow Queen and the human traitor spread across galaxies for centuries. Some said they ascended together, becoming part of the flame itself. Others said they lived quietly on the edge of the new world, growing old while the stars told their story. But no one ever forgot the truth, that the galaxy changed not because of power, but because one human dared to show kindness in a world that had forgotten what it meant. And in the endless night of the cosmos, two lights remained forever intertwined. One born of fire, one born of flesh, both eternal, both human.